Okay, Robert Hass. He is, of course, the spiritual daddy of this festival. And he also is a poet who, some 50 years after Pound and Williams, no thoughts but in things, put thinking back into poetry. All the new thinking is about loss. In this, it resembles all the old thinking. Here he is, Robert Hass.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Brenda. What I mainly want to do is to introduce to you three special guests. But I'll read a poem or two first. And the poems of Louise Glick are on my mind. Last Monday, she was saying maybe she was going to need more tests and possible serious treatment for cancer, and then in a couple of days she was dead. It's a shock. I met her when I think I was about 26. She was 24. This poem from her first book must have been written when she was 23 years old, about 50 years ago or more. It's called Cottonmouth Country. She grew up on the East Coast. Fish bones walked the waves off Hatteras, and there were other signs that death wooed us by water, wooed us by land. Among the pines, an uncurled cottonmouth rolled on moss and reared in the polluted air. Birth, not death, is the hard loss. I know. I also left a skin there. Little violent rhymed poem. So when I heard that, I thought, whoa, who is this? And here she is about 10 years later. She's now a mature poet of about 34. A poem called To Autumn, which is in itself a cheeky title, right? Morning quivers in the thorns over the budded snowdrops caked with dew like little virgins. The azalea bush ejects its first leaves, and it's spring again. The willow waits its turn. The coast is coated with a faint green fuzz, anticipating mold. Only I do not celebrate having flowered earlier. Or maybe it's only I do not collaborate having flowered earlier. I'm no longer young. What of the summer approaches and the long, decaying days of autumn, when I shall begin the great poems of my middle period? Cheeky. So this is a watershed poem. The creek in Shirley Canyon, creek in that canyon in the Sierra, in the valley that used to be called Squaw Valley, goes into the Truckee River and flows into the desert where it turns into clouds. As dusk comes on the day before solstice, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, song of the pond frogs, shrill piping of the cliff swallows. It's the time when, on the hillsides of pine forest and on the quivering aspens along the creek, light feels tender, song of a vireo, raspy song of a Buick's wren, so much movement in the trees. The longest recorded lifespan of a cliff swallow is 11 years. So these days of long light must be high festival to them. The kindly light on the cliff face, gleaming on the patches and gullies of snow. And the creek is flush with life, streams of snowmelt cascading down the bed of granite into turbulence. The ouzel, picking off insects in the spray, seems thrilled by. The creek flows into the Truckee River. I didn't need to tell you that. The creek flows into the Truckee River, which flows out of Tahoe and veers northeast into Pyramid Lake. It's a terminal lake, never reaches a large river, never reaches the sea. The Paiute people made their life there for 10,000 years. The universities study the lake now, measure the salinity. Up here in the late light, the vireo sounds ecstatic in the aspen, the swallows soaring in and out of their nest. They must be feeding the young, the insects. They must be feeding the young, the insects that are gleaning over the pond in the last light. How long is an insect's life? And the frogs, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And one by one, as the dark comes on, they get quiet. So this is November going into December and an astronomical event. You remember when Saturn crossed over Venus a couple of winters ago? It was visible in the Western Hemisphere for the first time since 1623. You walk up on a hillside, but this is about November going into December. Quack, 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 says the crow. It's morning. Quack, quack, quack. Or November morning. Icy air. Quack, quack, quack. Or November morning. Some crows caw, some croak. Morning meditation. The sycamores on the street. The way the tree's nervous system shuts off nourishment in the leaves according to a signal from the branches. There have been 3 consecutive icy mornings, and the trees begin to look half bare. This is the wrong draft of this poem. Anyway, begin to look half bare. And we make metaphors out of that. Bare, ruined choirs where late the sweet bird sang. Metonymy, just saying what's there, is the body's idiom. Metaphor, if the soul is our wondering minds making sense of themselves, metaphor is the soul's idiom. Last ripe huckleberries, and it's almost December. Just a few leaves left, the sycamore says. I think I'm getting sleepy. What do they have in common? Crows on a telephone wire, the blue sky, my neighbor's turquoise-trimmed windows, the cracks in the road on our seismically uneasy street. I did have the next page of that poem here somewhere. That they exist is what they have in common. Their being splashes over them like sunlight. It rains on them like rain. Sky, clouds, they look this morning like rumpled sheets. Someone invented the word rumple for that look. How miraculous. And think, in less than a second, the ear and the brain distinguish the slight difference in the sound made by the minuscule difference in the placement of the lips by someone saying rumple and not rumble. Puh, buh. It would be a different matter if the sky rumbled. And even early on a December morning in the cold, when it feels entirely good just to be awake, it is very pleasant to think of the rumpled look of a white down comforter strewn across a bed. The chickadee just landed and the cantua did a little head jerk, conning the branch for insects flew away. Cold wind, sky of raked clouds. On a morning toward the middle of December, the slant light hasn't reached the street yet. One scrub jay up in the sunlight on a telephone wire, warming its breast. My neighbors have begun their holiday decorations. Christmas tree lights on a hedge, ornaments on the branches of an ironwood tree. December 21st. The undersides of clouds just at dusk, a smoky rose. We stopped on the roadside and walked uphill to a meadow as the dark came on. Streaky sky, the moon visible, lambent behind clouds, and just above the ridge, the twinned lights. And then it happened, Saturn overriding Jupiter, becoming one small, bright, diamond shape of gleam in the dark and strew of stars, the cold coming on and darkening up the hill behind the shouts of a few other watchers staring at the sky, and then a cow lowing in the meadow. Keeping track of the seasons. So, the first of our guest readers is one of the people who is the reason that we're here. It takes work to make a community. And this is the 96 to 26. This is the 28th year of the Watershed Poetry Festival. And it was partly begun by Mark Baldrich, who we remember here today, and by our guest readers, who each of whom has been here every year for those years, and in many other ways, making the community in which we've been able to share poetry together. So the first of them, Kirk Lumpkin. I'm not sure what year, Kirk, you arrived in Berkeley, but he's been at least 20 years making the Ecology Center happen and working as the events coordinator for the farmers market, making this place, making this community, and helping with everything from putting up and taking down the tents to getting the word out about this. And he's the author of 2 books of poems and 2 CDs of the relationship between sound and poetry. We just owe him a lot. Let's get to hear him read some poems. Kirk.
This one, Tesser? All right. So somebody who hasn't been credited today is our sound person, Tesser. So give it up for Tesser. See, the problem with sound people, if they do a great job, you never notice them. And so you never think about that they contributed to making an event happen. And, well, special events people often don't get credited, so thanks for the few moments. I got one poem here. It's called Here. the names of flamboyant, notorious leaders with their trumped-up self-importance may be remembered long after most of us. But hold on to and nourish, keep alive in our culture all that leads by living example, courageous love, unselfish justice, creative compassion, persistent caring, feeling the joy of simply being, gratitude for all in the interrelated web of life, so that those that come after us might inherit an inner compass, able to hold community together as it guides them through the perilous burning darkness ahead, back to these places we've called home, but have barely truly known, where the final test of survival will be learning to find sustained sustenance here within our local watersheds, here with no place else to go, here to survive. We will need to re-indigenize. Thank you.
The completely amazing Richard Silberg was born in Brooklyn, and I think arrived in Berkeley, I want to say in 1969 because of 67, because of Brenda's poem. He's going to get here before. Richard also, with Joyce, started the upstairs at Cody's Books poetry series that ran for 30 years. I think 30 years. And Richard, with luminous and intelligence and absolute dead-on accuracy, has been generously describing other people's poems for all those years, as well as being here every year for the Watershed Festival. He's the author of many books, but the one that you want to get a hold of right now is Horses, his selected poems, and then the one collection of his brilliant introductions, which is called Describing the Sphere? Did I get the verb wrong? Reading the Sphere. We now get to read and just offer endless thanks and gratitude and amazement to Richard Silberg.
Well, as Bob told you, I was born in New York, so I came late and dimly to nature. But this is a Berkeley poem called Flowering Bushes on 4th Street. Being a Stone City guy, I had no name for those purple flowers, but their colors so blazed in my brain. Dark torches, not hot, but searching as thirst, and lit dark, tripling, rich, that I itched to write them. But how do you write purple? Pure sea, brute excitation, seething, tunneling. But Lawrence and his gentians had already beaten me to the underworld. And those smoke rings I saw as a kid with my pop in Times Square, sleazy puffs from that wall-sized Lucky Strikes ad, get only their shadow, flowers of smoke, blank, vanishing. Do they spread? Do they spiral? Do they vixen? The poem has followed me for years like a shaggy dog. How do I say that quenchless purpling? Okay, one more poem. Here's New York. Dog's Eye. We'd wandered farther up the river than ever before, up past the bridge to a broad curve, a swale. Families were picnicking, Grande Jatte by the Hudson, we noodling, slouching past, down towards the water where it sucks at the rocks, when we found the dead dog. Carnival of its death, tarnival, slick, black grin. It lay on its side in a mud pit, noseless, fat pig dog. Savage fed her when it caught the wind as we circled it, sharp, crawling smell. Larry threw a rock, thud, high wickering laugh, obscene because it scared him. Thud, thud. I saw the flesh quiver, so I yelled, stopped him, shoved him, felt sorry for its death, its stench and dignity, jaws drinking the mud, see it spreading long shot, George Washington Bridge, spooky death of my childhood, banana split death of the horror comic books, dignity, dognity, syzygy.
You won't be surprised to know who our third special guest is. Joyce was born in Ypsilanti, Michigan. You can still hear Midwestern vowels when she reads poems. I think she was 20 when she arrived here in 1972, and almost immediately, along with a writer named Keith Abbott, started a little mimeograph handout keeping track of poets and poetry readings that they called Poetry Flash. And after a while, Richard joined her in that process, and she has been, for almost 50 years, making this community by doing this work every day, every month. And Watershed, as got folded into it, we all just owe her an amazing debt. She's won about every award you can win for community service and literary service, the literary community, and she deserved them. There are 2 chapbooks of her work that I know. One of them is called Joy Road, and is that right? The name is Joy Road, and that's a pretty good description of what she's given us. So welcome very warmly, Joyce Jenkins.
Thank you, Bob. And yes, it's this is the we're just past it. We're past it, a year past it, but it's the 50th anniversary of Poetry Flash, and yes, it's actually was Steve Abbott, but Keith Abbott was actually a friend too, and wrote for Poetry Flash, so it's very deceptive. but it was, and we didn't actually found it, but we actually inherited it as a kind of a much tinier thing, and then we made it bloom. And I just want to say that the work that I've been doing with Watershed is all about, it's like a praise song to the earth with the tools that we have at our disposal, which are poetry, art, and community. And Bob and Brenda are right at the heart of that, and Danusha and Michael War and everybody who's here, every single person, every single poet, you're all part of that song that we're singing to the earth. And she needs it. She really needs it. I'm gonna read here's an odd little poem. These are very much in the line of we are nature, because we are nature. Love. One kind word can warm 3 winter months. Japanese proverb. When is love going to come up on the shore and kiss your hands like a bird? Your heart a snowy egret, my heart a stopped clock. Your heart a white cloud, my heart a broken clasp. Let the water run down the hill. Let my heart open to the tide. The mudslide comes with a roar. And this is, again, We Are Nature. It's about a friend of mine who's a singer-songwriter in Detroit, where I'm from originally, very near Ypsilanti. And she passed of ALS, and this is about her and all of us. Robin's song. Robin's song. She packed us a soda in the little cooler. She went into the closet to look for it. Leaning on her IV pole, hand on hip, the straws were a brilliant addition. He wants to tear out the walls so she can see the garden. She will tell him where to plant from her wheelchair. She was fitted with braces on her hands and feet, but first she turned the portfolio pages, studied the art. I was looking out of the window, and suddenly there was no glass. She moved the flowers from the table, her little dog Guppy squirming for air. She twirled her lasso, her feeding tube. Spring hadn't hit yet. For her, each season would make one more bow, one last cowgirl adventure to see Old Faithful. On the road, an emergency room, jean jacket she never wore, gnashing paralysis, morphine, an aria sung at Christmas time. She scrawled out quiet thank yous and goodbyes, curled fingers beckoning her subjects, her loved ones. She asked for her hats, for a little extra mojo. Their princess needed her red beret. Her magic wand signed jokey little miracles in pulsing concentric circles. But first she will press the locomotive key, the rhino roar, her computer a deadpan translator, a cappella undertaker, raging passive-aggressive understudy, sotto voce mechanical beast, trapped on a delicate stage. Narrative had become impossible for us, and grammar a tall, cool tower. I'm not rich, so I want to sleep on the futon, he said. Okay, I said, though you make no sense at all. You've lost it too. We tremble and laugh. What do you make of the indigo out the window, I said. Blue darker than night, Jupiter hovering near the moon. all a mystery again, more so now than when we were young and everything new. Now the mystery hangs in the air like a fog of skunk and gasoline dancing to a slow country waltz. Pull the green grass over my shoulders, she said. I don't see it, he said, but I hear it, the ancient keening, like a big river rushing. The house is still, a shroud, yet a robin redbreast sits in the snowy window, shares my coffee. My story is over, she said. My story is over. Pull the green grass over my shoulders. Keep my poem in a carved wooden box. What? Yeah, I could be done. One more? One more? Thank you. Okay. Brenda wants to hear one more. So, well, here's an old odd poem, a little more heady, but it's about how our minds work, but it's also, we are nature. Remember, our minds are part of nature, and we're part of this praise song. It's called Discovery. Let's take this cool and light. The voice, my voice, but perhaps yours, resonates from a particular place, tremor pool of the brain. That is to say, the body, but also its less physical webs, such as soul arc, aura. The point is midway in a clearing. It is night, and the snow is incandescent. To say this is to say a puzzle. The voice is authoritative, but not low, not mundane, and not vibrationally low. The voice is not conscious of its act. It is simple articulation, out-of-sync tongue, earnestly dubbing the undermine's script. In the dark, the upheld signing hand cannot own its deep perceptions, can swim in its burning, freezing seas only in sleep. There is no dialogue, only the breeze over rippling tides, nonverbal call and response, self to self without consciousness of self, and so with no lack of poise or balance. Through the glittery night, the determined snowflake glides. Crazy pinball pings softly between the legs of the moon, swirls the silvery orchard. Low bell stroke far away, tall tower on the horizon. Luminous, luminous, tremulous quake at the red-hot center wherever you are, opening your mouth to speak. True pitch, celestial chime, tuning fork quiver, wild spitfire, nerve to the heart. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all.